Welcome to Theories of Knowledge. We're thrilled to be kicking off this evening the first collaborative online course for Arts and Humanities doctoral students across Scotland, brought to you by the Scottish Graduate School for Arts and Humanities with the support of the AHRC and the Scottish Funding Council. Theories of Knowledge will examine the ways in which philosophers and critical theorists have influenced and indeed continue to animate how we understand knowledge production within arts and humanities fields. Both a survey of key themes in critical theory and an invitation to collaborative reflection on our roles as knowledge producers in arts and humanities research and practice. The 10-week lecture series will be delivered live and online by leading researchers from the member institutions of the Scottish Graduate School, and our participants, 300 at last count, hail from across the disciplines and around the country. For those of you attending remotely tonight, we'll be taking live questions and comments from our online discussion forum following the lecture. Please log in to knowtheory.org, that's knowtheory.org, and navigate to the What is Epistemology post on the discussion page. You'll also find there Professor Hawley's handout, which you can download for reference during the lecture. Without further ado, then, I'm pleased to introduce Professor Katherine Hawley, who will be delivering the first lecture in our 10-week series on the question, what is epistemology? Professor Hawley is Professor of Philosophy at the University of St. Andrews. She studied physics and philosophy at Balliol College, Oxford, and took her MPhil and PhD in the Department of History and Philosophy of Science, working with Peter Lipton. She was Henry Sidgwick Research Fellow of Newnham College, Cambridge, before taking up a lectureship at St. Andrews in 1999. She currently holds a Leverhulme Major Research Fellowship and is working on a project concerning the ethics and epistemology of trust, promising, and competence. Her other main area of research is metaphysics, where she has written about persistence, identity, time, and other weighty matters. Professor Hawley is author of Trust, a very short introduction, out from Oxford in 2012, and How Things Persist, also from Oxford in 2001, as well as Far Too Many Articles and Chapters to list here. Tonight she'll be speaking to us on the nature of knowledge, the problem of doubt, and the value of knowledge generation in an arts and humanities context. So, welcome.
Well, hello and welcome. I'm going to wave at the camera. This is an unusual experience for me and perhaps for you as well. As Katie's just said, there's, I guess, about 20 people here in the room with me in St. Andrews, but I understand 300 people around Scotland sitting in front of laptops and perhaps even phones trying to peer down and see a tiny image of me. But I hope at least you can hear my voice. As Katie said, there is a handout which I've distributed to people in the room, and if you look on the discussion board section for this lecture, you'll be able to find that online as well. If you can't find it, don't worry. It's just a kind of brief note of what I'm saying. You don't need it in order to follow along this evening. So I'm going to be speaking for, I guess, a little bit less than an hour, and then there'll be some time for discussion afterwards, and we'll see how the virtual discussion goes as well as the discussion in the room. My interest in this area, as Katie said, I'm working on issues around trust and distrust and trustworthiness. Partly the ethics of that, like so knowing who to trust and who to trust on behalf of other people. So, for example, I have kids, and when I choose a babysitter, I'm choosing someone to trust with my children's interests, not just my own interests. But also an epistemological interest in trust. Thinking about this has brought me to think about ideas about evidence, about knowledge, and about the social character of knowledge. Right? So the more we think about trust, we see how essential it is to gaining knowledge that we're able to trust at least some other people and to understand who we can take knowledge from and who not. Okay, so as you know, if you've looked down the lecture schedule, there are 10 sessions in this course, picking up on a really wide variety of thinkers and themes and issues. And I think that's the wonderful thing about this course, is the sheer scope and breadth of it. But of course, it also means that any individual lecture can only give you a little taste of what that lecturer's interests and expertise are. What I'm going to do today, so my background is in philosophy, although a long time ago also in physics, and my approach to philosophy is what people often call analytic philosophy. That is, it's the approach to philosophy that is common in the majority of English-speaking departments of philosophy, often in the UK and in the US. But of course, it's not the only approach to philosophy, and you'll be hearing from philosophers of other schools later in the course. So that's the kind of pinch of salt at the beginning, right? So what I'm telling you is coming from my perspective, and you'll be hearing other perspectives later on. So what I want to do is, first of all, talk a little bit just about terminology. What do people mean by the word epistemology? And then I'm going to go on and give you a little taste of two issues that philosophers, particularly analytic philosophers, have been anxious about for a long time, about knowledge. One is the question about whether knowledge is even possible, and that's the kind of middle part of the handout. And then later on, as Katie said, I'll be saying something about the value of knowledge. Why is knowledge valuable? If indeed it is. Okay, so if you can see the handout, then I'm now in the first box on the handout, introduction. What do people mean by epistemology? And of course, the answer is, as with any academic or technical term, different people mean different things, and it gets kind of knocked around in different ways. So if sometimes you're struggling to match up what one person is meaning by a term with what someone else is meaning by a term, well, you're probably right to struggle. Often people use these terms in ways that don't quite match up. So I'm going to talk about three sorts of uses of the word epistemology, and that's what's in the first box on this. The first one, it's just a label for a subdiscipline of a discipline of philosophy. So within philosophy, like within any other discipline, we've got a mental map of how our discipline divides up into smaller sections. So things we might teach a course on, something you might have as a research specialism. So often in other humanities disciplines, people think in terms of periods or in terms of geographic locations. Typically in philosophy, people think about the philosophy of this or the philosophy of that. So we talk about ethics, the philosophy of right and wrong, we might say, philosophy of language, philosophy of mind, philosophy of politics. And epistemology is just another one of those, philosophy of knowledge, philosophical issues that arise when we think about knowledge. Not just knowledge, but kind of a bunch of related concepts like trust and distrust in my case, but also ideas like skill, understanding, reasoning, belief and truth to some extent. So that's one, in a sense, straightforward use of the name. It's just a label for a bit of philosophy. But beyond philosophy, when people use the term epistemology, it's often epistemology of something. Epistemology of X. What do we mean if we talk about epistemology of something or other? Well, typically what we mean is that it's a theory or an investigation or an account or study of what we know about X, or something about how we use X to gain knowledge or to lose knowledge. That's very abstract. I'm going to spend the next few minutes spelling that out a little bit. But I did some Googling and applying the search technique to see what comes up when you look at the epistemology of. And here's just a bunch of things I picked. Epistemology of the closet. This is a foundational study in text in queer studies, thinking about homosexuality and heterosexuality and issues about knowledge and connection with that. People often talk about the epistemology of technology, practice, epistemology of religion. I found an article about the epistemology of wargaming, that kind of thing they do at NATO HQ when they try out different scenarios. Epistemology of ignorance, that's a kind of interesting one, right? Because we're talking about knowledge, but now we've gone to the opposite of knowledge. So, important work by Charles Mills, for example, about racial injustice, particularly in the US, and how white ignorance plays a role there, and there's lots of fascinating work there. There's the epistemology of the very small, I found an article on that topic, by which they mean something to do with nanotechnology. Epistemology of the Large Hadron Collider, something very big, which we use to study something very small. Epistemology of torture. Epistemology of the origins of cancer. And, this is me just randomly Googling the other afternoon, right? So you can see this is for anything that we might be interested in as scholars or indeed as human beings, it's possible to think about anything, that's a bold phrase, but for many things, it's possible to think about the epistemology of that thing. And again, if you look at that list, some of those things there are human institutions, social practices, and so on, but some of them are what we might think of as natural phenomena or biological entities and so on. There's a whole bunch of different things there we might have an epistemology of. And what do we mean by that? Well, as I said at the beginning, people mean different things, but normally when we're talking about the epistemology of something, we're talking about our knowledge of it or the way in which we use it to get knowledge. Again, I'll be coming back over and over these things as we go through. Another way, a related way in which people use the term epistemology is to make a contrast. So again, if we're trying to understand what a technical term means, it's often useful to think about what to be contrasted with, what's the converse of that. And when people say epistemology, epistemological, epistemic, often there's a contrast there with words like ontology, ontological, ontic, sometimes metaphysical. What's the contrast? If someone's making that contrast, what are they trying to highlight? What are they trying to draw our attention to? Well, again, it's the contrast between studying what or how we know about something as compared with studying the thing itself. And that might seem sort of puzzling, and I think there is something puzzling. Right? How can we study a thing without studying how we know about the thing? Right? And again, I'll be coming back over that. But just to give you a concrete example of the kind of thing I have in mind, the kind of contrast people try and draw out with this sort of thing. Medical epistemology. So that's an area of study. Right? So within medical epistemology, researchers are interested in really what are the right standards of evidence within medicine. What does it take for us to know something in medicine? How do we know when a drug is an effective drug for a certain population? What are the right methods? What are the right standards of evidence? And so, for example, medical epistemologists argue a lot amongst themselves about whether what's sometimes called the gold standard, this randomized controlled trials, this is a certain kind of large-scale, carefully constrained experiment. Is that the only way we need to get medical knowledge, or to get knowledge of whether a drug is effective? Or should we also be considering other kinds of evidence? So, for example, individual case histories, or sometimes called expert opinions, and that might be the opinion of doctors or other medical researchers. Patient reports. So that's something a medical epistemologist might worry about or think about, would be, can we get medical knowledge from just listening to what patients say, or is that just kind of too anecdotal or too biased or too problematic in some way to give us knowledge? Now, that's what medical epistemologists discuss, but they're not, when people are doing that and discussing these sorts of issues, they're not per se doing medical research. Medical research is to investigate the body, disease, drugs, therapies, interventions, and so on. So that's supposed to give you a contrast between the epistemological questions there, which is about how do we come to have knowledge in medicine, what are the standards of evidence, what are the right ways of proceeding in medicine, as opposed to actually doing some medicine or doing some medical research. Now, I've talked about this as if there's two groups of people, the medical epistemologists and the medical researchers, but often there's going to be a big overlap there. Some people are doing both, and that's important. But not everybody. Right? So some of the people who discuss these issues in medical epistemology, for example, are statisticians, and rightly so. We want statisticians to have input into these sorts of debates. There are philosophers who are important figures in these debates. Nancy Cartwright, for example. Economists always like to expand their empires, right? So economists are also getting involved in these debates. Likewise, on the medical side, of course, there are medical researchers who are actively participating in these debates and research about what are the proper standards of evidence in medicine, but not all of them. Right? And fair enough. I mean, we have to divide up intellectual labour. Some medical researchers are doing their medical research, and they're using methods of generating medical knowledge, but it's not part of their research to sit back and reflect actively about them. So that was supposed to give you an example of how there might be a difference between the epistemology of medicine, in this case, and medicine itself, even though, of course, in practice, these things are going to be entangled and some people are going to be doing that. Now, if the 300 people around Scotland were here in the room, at this point we'd be stopping and having a bit of a discussion, or I'd be asking you to discuss with your neighbour some of these issues, but we can't do that, so we'll have some discussion at the end. I'll try to kind of guess what might be going through some people's mind, or kind of queries or puzzlement that might already have arisen. About this distinction between thinking about our knowledge about something and thinking about the thing itself. Alright, so now we're in the second box, which says, hold on a moment. In this case, if you're feeling puzzled, you're character A, and I'm character B here. So you, perhaps, or your neighbour, might say, well, look, epistemology is a Large Hadron Collider, right? So there's, in fact, one reason I mentioned that is that there's a very large research project in Germany and Austria called the Epistemology of the Large Hadron Collider, which which involves philosophers and sociologists and historians of science. But we might say, well, look, what are those people doing? Right? So if I want to study our knowledge of the Large Hadron Collider, what am I going to do? Well, when I just get a big book about the Large Hadron Collider, or read the papers about how it's built or what it's used for, so on, isn't that just another way of studying the Large Hadron Collider? What's the conscience there? Is that going to count as epistemology or not? Well, good question. But my response would be this: to say, well, what those people are doing when they think of themselves as doing the epistemology of the LHC, what they're doing, they're going to need to know something about the LHC. Otherwise, most of us in this room people wouldn't know where to start with that. So they need to know a little bit about it. But what are they going to be doing? They're going to be studying either how we know about it, or, more plausibly in this case, what they're concerned is how do we use the Large Hadron Collider to gain knowledge? What are the limitations on that? So, for example, this example is dear to my heart because I met someone who was working on this recently, and he told me that they, these experiments are huge. Like they have sort of 1,000 cohorts when they publish about these things, which is interesting in its own right. But this guy was involved with the computer coding for this, and he said they have two completely different sets of coding, and it's developed by different research teams, and they're not allowed to talk to each other. And in fact, if you work for one team, there's a sort of embargo period before you can go and work for the other team. And they think that's important because they want to develop two different, completely independent systems for analysing the data from these huge machines, so that they can have a kind of independent check on what comes out of it. When they analyse it and they think they found the Higgs boson or whatever it is, they've got more than one way of analysing it. Why would they do that? Why is that important? Those are the sort of questions that epistemologists might be interested in. So thinking about, again, thinking about the medical case, we're thinking about what's the right standards of truth or standards of evidence, how do we use these techniques and technologies in order to gain knowledge. Here's another thing, there's another source of puzzlement. Maybe you might be thinking, well, look, how can we, in distinguishing epistemology of X from studying X itself, maybe I'm suggesting that we can investigate something without even having to think about the methods with which we investigate it, and that seems peculiar, right? So remember I said, well, there are medical researchers who don't study medical epistemology. Of course, that's true. Those medical researchers will have had long training and will have reflected about the methods that they do use in their scientific research. They're not just kind of blindly going around the lab or whatever it is. So, I mean, they're reflective people who think about what is an appropriate way of carrying out an experiment or doing a study in their area of medicine. And you might think, so it's unrealistic to think that there's a difference between studying a thing and studying the ways we study the thing. So I put these words into your mouth. Here you are, your character A again. Can we really seek to gain knowledge without first understanding how we gain knowledge? Well, one little kind of red flag should be there. I mean, I've put the words in your mouth, so I've given you I've made you say something that's problematic for you. We might think there's a possible regress there. So that's one thing to worry about. If we thought that in order to understand a thing, we have to understand how we understand that, we might think, well, maybe we need to understand how we understand how it, and you can see how that would be difficult to get started. So let me give you a slightly more concrete response. What we're worrying about here is someone who says, well, look, I can't just study something or gain knowledge about something without understanding how I get knowledge. I've got to do the epistemology first. Here's a counterexample of that, or here's a response to that. I might say, well, look, you're using your visual system right now to gain information about the world around you. In fact, this is a great example for our current situation because all over Scotland, people are using the wonders of the internet and of technology to learn more about epistemology from me. So we're all gaining knowledge, but you're gaining mundane knowledge about your surroundings, and you also, I hope, gaining some knowledge about epistemology. And I certainly don't. And most of us don't have much of an understanding about how the tools we're using to do that, certainly not the technology. Most of us don't understand how our visual system works. And certainly in the past, people have very false, but very misguided ideas about how the visual system works. That doesn't stop us using our eyes to get knowledge. I wanted to give you that as a kind of pushback to say, so if you're thinking, oh, well, I can't get knowledge without first knowing how I get knowledge, I want to say, well, at an ordinary mundane level, we often do this. We get knowledge using our senses and the internet and so on, without really understanding how that's working. Well, again, I'm giving you what you might say back to me if we were in a small group chatting about this. You might think, well, look, if I really have no idea at all about how my senses work, or even that the internet is somehow a kind of mechanical electronic device for transmitting data, if I knew nothing, then I really wouldn't be getting knowledge that's working. Or you might think, well, look, I don't have to know how it works, but I do have to have experience to know that using my senses and using the internet is a good way of getting knowledge. I'm going to let you have the last word on that, because what I want to say, or the words I've given you can be the last word here. All I want to point out at this stage is, well, nobody into philosophy. And that's, you might think, oh my, no, that's the last thing I want us to be doing, or you might think, great, we're doing some philosophy. And that's fine, either response is fine. Me, it's great, but the point I want to get out of this is that as soon as we start going down this route, we're already into kind of complex and interesting questions, all right? And that's all I need you to take away from this last few minutes. Well, that's not all I want you to take away, but the other thing I want to take away from that would be this thought that, well, look, it's not just obvious that when we study something, we have to study our knowledge about it, right? Maybe in the end those are meant to be the same thing, or maybe they don't, but that's something in itself that we would have to do. All right, and that's bring me back to the main theme of the lecture and finish off this first part. That makes sense, right? Because what I'm trying to do here is say, well, there's epistemology of things, epistemology of this or that and the other, and there's also studying this and that and the other. And whilst those things can kind of come together and they can inform one another, they're not just one and the same thing. That's a good thing, because otherwise everything would be epistemology. Philosophers might take over the world, but it wouldn't be a very successful world. Okay, so that, if you're looking at the handout, that brings me to the end of the second box there. And that's about that's the first of the three main parts of the lecture. The next thing I want to do is to shift gear a little bit and just give you a sort of flavour of some concerns that philosophers have had about the possibility of knowledge, and some of the kind of responses we might make. So when I start off, in the first part, the first minutes of talking about this, it's going to be in a very general way, right? Is any kind of knowledge at all possible? But as I go on to this a little bit, I'm going to try and bring it back around to some concerns you may have, more particularly about gaining knowledge through your own research, or through research in the arts and humanities. Well, is knowledge possible? How to get worried? Maybe I don't have to tell bad students how to get worried about getting knowledge, but this is how philosophers try to incite worry. And this, particularly the first concern here, goes back to the ancient Greeks. I put question marks at the beginning of these things to indicate that I'm not just telling you this, I'm just saying this is something that some people have thought we might want to think about. So here's one thing I know. You might say, well, what is knowledge? Well, knowledge is not just any random old thing you happen to think. Knowledge is something that you have evidence for, grounds for, you've got reasons for, and often when someone claims to know something, a legitimate thing we can say to them is, well, how do you know? Or why is that? Or, tell me more. And if they can't say anything about why they think that or how they came to know it, it's not so plausible after all that they know it. So knowing something is connected in some important way with being able to give some kind of justification or reasons or evidence. And as for the ancient Greeks noticed, well, they said, well, look, and of course, as you'll have noticed if you spend any time with a young child, someone asks why, and they give the answer, there's another why question straight after that. So I say, well, why do you think that? You give me your reasons. Oh, well, why do you think that? Give me some more reasons. Why is that? What evidence do you have for that? And we can keep going. There seems to be, and this is sometimes sort of trilemma, there seems to be only three ways this story is going to go, right? One is you can just go on forever. There's always another why. What are your grounds for that? What are your reasons for thinking that? How do you know that? How do you know that? How do you know that? Another possibility is, in the end, you come back around to where you started, your starting point. And the third option seems to be at some point you just stop and you just say, well, I just do know. Or when it's a kid, it's because I said so, right? It's that sort of thought, well, here I stand, you can't go any further, this is kind of bottom line. Well, why is that a problem? You might say, well, that's just, okay, that's what we do, right? There's no problem here. people who are concerned about this say, well, look, none of those, there's three ways that might go once you start trying to justify your knowledge. And none of them is a very happy place to be, right? So an infinite regress, well, partly it's going to take a long time, but also it seems to suggest you never really get into solid ground. Right? You're always in a position where someone can say, well, what about that? Or how do you know that? So that seems like that doesn't seem very satisfactory, a way to ground your knowledge. Circular reasoning is kind of famously problematic, right? That's what we call begging the question, or that's not ideal either. And mere articles of faith maybe have their place, but they don't seem like a very satisfactory basis for knowledge. At least they haven't for some people. I mean, for all of these things, there are responses, right? So some people will say, oh, an article of faith is certain articles of faith are articles of faith. But it's possible to get yourself kind of worried about what do we really know once we start thinking about how do we justify what we know, how do we justify that. So that's one way, as I said, an ancient way of generating concern about knowledge or making us start thinking that maybe we don't really know anything at all. Here's a quite different route, right? So now this is the second question mark. Again, what if we were in the room together now, what I would have done is take a few minutes and I would have asked you to write down some things that you know, and you would have written down quite a few things. Whether it's the day of the week, or your own name, or some kind of complex facts about politics, or about your research and so on. We tend to think we know a whole bunch. But now we have the skeptic coming in, the sort of the provocateur, saying, well, look, it seems to you now like you're sitting in a room, or sitting in your office, or sitting at home, listening to somebody talking about epistemology. It will be a dream. Can you be dreaming something like this? It's a more specific concern. You might think, well, look around you, look at the people nearby, or look out of the window, you're not in the same room as anybody. It looks like everyone else around you is having kind of thoughts and conscious experiences and feelings as you do. Are they really? Could they be some kind of automata? Maybe you're the only conscious person. So this is something that sometimes kids worry about. Sometimes some of the people who are not kids can get kind of worried about this sort of thing as well. Here's one from Bertrand Russell. He said, well, look, here's the world as we see it. It would look just like this if everything had actually started 5 minutes ago and we'd all had false memories created. It would just look exactly like this. Here's another kind of, so some of these concerns go back to Descartes, but here's a more contemporary way of thinking about it. You feel like you know a lot of things about your ordinary life, but are you really sure you're not living in something like The Truman Show? You haven't seen that. It's got a guy, he doesn't realise he's living in basically on a reality TV show and everyone else is an actor. Well, The Matrix, philosophers love to refer to The Matrix, and now all of our students are too young to have ever seen The Matrix. But again, it's the idea that can you really be sure that you're actually having the experiences you're having, rather than being Keanu Reeves stuck in the Matrix. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, if anyone's seen that, where the premise there is that you can have memories wiped and new memories put in. Again, so you feel like you're meeting someone you feel like you've never met them before. Are you sure you've never met them before? Or is this your ex-partner that you've had the memory wiped? So there's all these kind of scenarios. And on the one hand, you might say, well, look, this is kind of fun, or this is just the reason I stopped taking philosophy classes, is this kind of nonsense. There's different reactions here as to whether you find this kind of thing engaging or not, of course. But why do philosophers don't just find it kind of fun to think about, although we do. They also, certainly some philosophers think this is a real threat to our knowledge. And you might think, well, how can this be? Right? These are just sort of stories or kind of fun little, not trivia exactly, but they're kind of fun puzzles to think about. How can this really make me concerned about whether I know? Well, the worry is supposed to be this. You might say, well, look, I think I'm not on The Truman Show, all right? Maybe I can't prove I'm not. You can't prove to me that I am either, right? So I think I'll just stick with what I think, right? Well, yeah, maybe I can't prove that other people are not conscious. I can't prove that other people have conscious lives like I do. You can't prove to me that they don't either, so, I'll stick with what I've got. The trouble is with this response that the skeptic has an easy, so the person who's kind of putting forward these scenarios has a slightly easier job than we might think. Because they can say, well, look, even if you're not in the Truman Show, even if you're not in the Matrix, even if you're not dreaming, the fact that you can't tell the difference is enough to kind of undermine your knowledge in some way. That's what the worry says to be. I'm not trying to prove to you, or the philosopher's not trying to prove to you that you really are in the Matrix. They're just trying to say, well, look, if you can't be sure either way, that undermines everything else. Well, here's a response. Here you are, your character A again. Here's something you want to say. You might say, well, look, I can't be sure, right? And maybe this is fun to talk about in the pub, but I can be pretty certain. I think ideas are very natural, right? To say, well, look, you can get worried about these things, but if you think that's undermining your knowledge, you've got an over-idealistic idea of what knowledge is, but you set the bar too high. But here's the response. And the response is to say, well, look, to go back to the trilemma, the justification one, justification never ends or ends in an arbitrary article of faith or just a circle. The worry is supposed to be here that it's not just that's not 100% perfect justification. The worry is that that's just a kind of illusion. There's nothing there at all. Like, if you can't give me the basis for your knowledge, it sort of melts away. There's nothing. It's not just kind of pretty good. It's nothing that's left. And the same thing with the other kind of skepticism, the worry about the alternative scenario. Okay, the idea is not supposed to be that I can prove to you that you're in the matrix. The worry is supposed to be that, look, if you can't prove to me that you're not, then you can't prove to me that it's particularly likely that you're not either, or even that it's 50-50 that you're not. But we seem to be we've kind of lost our grip somehow. So this is the kind of thing. So I don't want you to go away thinking that, down the road in the philosophy department, everyone's just having an existential crisis. Right? So this is how to get worried about this kind of stuff. So David Hume famously said that, we'd have all these kind of philosophical concerns during the day, but then he would go off and do his experiments and take backgammon in the evening, and that was all okay. Right? You can combine these two things. So somehow we can have these philosophical worries when we're doing philosophy, or we're thinking about knowledge in these kind of theoretical ways. But it doesn't seem to stop us, finding our way home and knowing where to meet our friends and remembering how to play backgammon. But nevertheless, it does seem to suggest there's something problematic about our concept of knowledge or our understanding of knowledge. Right? We should feel that we should have something we could say in response to this, not just, push off kind of thing. So if you look at the second page of the handout, I wanted to show you just a few of the things that people have tried to say. So, G. Raw, Cambridge philosopher from the first part of the 20th century, said, well, look, he was being confronted by someone who said, look, how can you even be sure that you have hands, right? Because couldn't this all be a dream? And he said, well, here are my hands. Here's one hand and here's another hand. That's it. That's why not. Now, how we doesn't sound like much of a philosophical argument, right? But on the other hand, there's a lot of appeal there, right? Well, yeah, okay, here are my hands. Here's one way of understanding what Moore was saying. We might say, well, look, these philosophical arguments, they may be exciting or annoying, depending on your point of view, and they're potentially confusing, they make us confused about whether we know something or not. But my confidence that I have hands, or that I'm a human being, listening to a talk about epistemology, my confidence in that is higher than any kind of confidence I can have in any sort of complex theoretical philosophical argument. Right? So although I can't see what's wrong with the philosophical argument, I know there must be something wrong with it, so I don't have to worry. So it's a bit like when, somebody comes to your door and tries to sell you a new gas deal or something like that, or they stop you on the street. Even if you can't see what's problematic about what they're saying, sometimes you can just feel sure, well, there must be something wrong there, I don't have to take this seriously. And that's one kind of response here. We might say, well, look, I don't have to say what's wrong with these philosophical challenges. I can just tell by the fact that that the philosophers end up saying we don't have any knowledge, something must have gone wrong, even if we don't know what it is. So that's one kind of response. Here's another kind of response that I find really intriguing from the American philosopher David Lewis. And he said that, well, knowledge has got this really peculiar character, which is that when you start thinking about it, reflecting on it, and thinking about its basis, it kind of goes away. Right? So the more you listen to people like me telling you that you don't know whether you're dreaming or not, or that your justification goes off into an infinite chain, the more you get that into your mind, the less you know. And as we said, the philosophy department is problematic for us because then we become the only department that's reducing our students' levels of knowledge. So the good thing about this, So Lewis said, well, this knowledge is elusive. When you try and focus on it, it's not there. But, fortunately, when you stop worrying about it, you get to know things again. So there's something kind of nice about this. On the one hand, that it's a sort of explanation of why we find these skeptical worries compelling, or not compelling, but unsettling perhaps. It's this explanation that it's the very fact of thinking about it stops you knowing stuff. And so the solution to getting more knowledge is not to worry about it too much. And there's something appealing about that, as I said. Although there's also worry that you can go too far with that thought. We don't want to block any kind of critical reflection on how we know things or how we come to know. So that's one response. Here's another one. This is the third one in this box on the second side of the handout. You might say, well, maybe I don't really know whether I'm in the matrix or whether the world began 5 minutes ago. But still, I can know, that doesn't stop me knowing ordinary stuff, like where I live or what my thesis topic is. You don't have to, these things don't have to stand. Here's one that I like. So I can see I've given 3 lines for the one I like. A different thing we might say is, well, look, now that I see these worries, maybe I can't really prove that I know stuff. But that doesn't stop me knowing things. I'm not kind of a bit paradoxical. But there are lots of other things in life which are good to have, like knowledge, and you can have them even if you can't prove that they have. So the examples I have, I put love, talent, kindness. Right? So it's nice to know that you're loved. Even if you're not sure whether you're loved, you still can be. Right? So you don't have to know that someone loves you in order for them to love you, which is good for lots of reasons. Talent, right? There are people who are talented and they don't know that they're talented, or they don't know how talented they are. I think probably lots of us are like that. Kindness, again, you can be a kind person without realizing that you are. A kind of paradoxical line from the handout is modesty, right? So the question is, can you be modest if you know how great you are at being modest? Right? I'm such a modest person, doesn't it? Right, so the point I'm trying to make is that there are lots of things in life that are valuable things for us to have, that we can have whether we know we've got them or not. And the suggestion here is, well, maybe knowledge is one of those things, right? It's a bit weird, right? That you can know, the thought here is that maybe we can know stuff even though we're not sure whether we know it or not. Or maybe even if these kind of skeptical worries are kind of undermined or theoretical or higher order or meta-level thinking about knowledge, that doesn't stop us actually knowing. But there's something appealing about that. I like that kind of response, I think, because it enables me to keep worrying about whether we know stuff or not and having the philosophical debate without thinking that that's automatically undermining all the ordinary things. Let me just, so I've been talking about philosophical debates here, but let me just sort of try and apply that a little bit to some of the concerns you may have. And I think if you're enrolled in this course, I guess it's partly because you're interested in concerns about knowledge in the context of your own research and how you can come to have knowledge in the arts and humanities and so on. And I think this is a sort of balance that all of us have to try and strike. Like with the medical researchers, it's important to reflect on our methods and on how we get knowledge in our field, but there is also a danger of kind of doing too much of that. And there's a way in which you can undermine yourself and certainly undermine your confidence by too much kind of paralyzing self-reflection. So I don't have a recipe that tells you exactly how much you should do, but I think it's an interesting feature of this sort of study. Is knowing how much is enough or how much you need to do, and that's partly a personality issue. It's also something I think you have to think about the context of your own project. Let me then just give you one other response to these sort of worries that I'm not so keen on, but which is quite a common response. So one response here would be to say, well, look, okay, there are these worries about what do I really know, can I really be sure, how high are the standards and so on. One response then is, I think, to retreat a little bit and say, well, so I will think one thing, Katie thinks something else, Wes thinks something else. Well, maybe what I think is my knowledge and what you think is your knowledge and what you think is your knowledge, and we don't have to try and resolve our differences. So in a way that makes knowledge a less ambitious thing, right? It's a more personal thing, or something we don't have to sort of resolve in that way. There's lots of philosophical issues here, but to my mind, I just have some ethical concerns about going too far down that way. Right? If you think about it in the context of I mean, to take a really extreme example, Holocaust denial, right? We don't want to just say, well, okay, well, that's true for you, and, I happen to think the Holocaust really happened, but if you don't, that's your point of view. There's something really problematic about applying this sort of relativism to those sorts of facts. Obviously, if the Holocaust, right, so that there must be something problematic about some of the other things I might want to say, or I had to go to such an extreme example. But no, this extreme is worth thinking about. There's always a temptation in this area to want to be to get on with people and to want to give full weight to other people's points of views. But also, there's often an importance in trying to say, well, we can't always all be right, and trying to see when which way to go in different cases. So I say practical consequences here. I mean, in terms of your research. Well, what I've been talking about here is kind of concerns that maybe all knowledge isn't possible, or knowledge isn't really something we can aspire to, or this is kind of too high a standard or something. But of course, whatever you're doing, whatever you're researching, then as you're becoming embedded in your discipline, you're applying a notion of difference between a good argument and a bad argument. Strong evidence, weak evidence, what's the right kind of, the kind of evidence that we look for in history is going to be different from what it might be in English, for example, or in other literary studies. And we kind of these are some of the things that we try and absorb as we're doing our research, learning to be researchers, to a conclusion and just a kind of non sequitur. Different disciplines, I think, have different ideas about this, and this is one of the challenges if you're doing a multidisciplinary project, is that you're trying to reconcile the different perspectives, different sort of evidentiary or different argumentative frameworks of different disciplines. But nevertheless, the point is that we have to have, whatever those standards are, you need to be working with them some kind of time. You need to learn to recognize what counts as good and bad argumentation in your discipline or in your area. Another point to remind you of here, as you know, that part of the PhD is its original research. What do we mean by original? Well, to understand we can debate that, but somewhere in the background of that, there's got to be a difference between what's already known and what's yet to know, what the knowledge that you're discovering or creating. Again, that gives us so that we have to say, well, there's got to be some notion of knowledge here, right? We can't just give up on the concept of knowledge if we're to understand what we're doing as researchers. Okay, so let me move on now to the final topic I want to talk about. And again, I don't want to give the impression that I've given you the last word on any of these things. Particularly, I feel like, because I'm standing here and I'm not, normally when I teach there's lots of back and forth, and so the fact that I can't even see most of you is making me feel like I'm just kind of pronouncing from the pulpit, and that's not how I intend to present this material. It's more to kind of give you things to think about. And I hope that almost all of you are disagreeing with me. But here's my final question for today. Who cares? Who cares about knowledge? Why should we care about knowledge? I take it that if you have signed up for this course, then you have some concern about knowledge. If we have any concern about the sort of skeptical ways I was talking about a few minutes ago, we felt the urge to say, well, yes, I do know things, or to worry if we felt we didn't know things, because we feel knowledge is important. And that's why, so remember I said epistemology is one of the subdisciplines of philosophy. Why do we have a whole area that just studies knowledge? It's because knowledge is important. Knowledge has value of some kind. But the question is what? Why do we value knowledge? Or in what ways do we value knowledge? Something that's useful here is to distinguish different questions. Again, philosophers, analytic philosophers like to distinguish them. That's our core skill, we might say. So here's two questions. This is the bullet points here in this final box on the handout. So here's one question we might say. Well, you might say, is it better to believe the truth rather than to believe something false? And is it better to believe the truth rather than to suspend judgment? Sometimes, not always we face it that we have a kind of choice about what to do here, but is it better to find oneself with a true belief rather than a false belief? Is it better to have a true belief rather than no belief? So, all that thought, I'll come back and try and answer that a little bit in a moment. But here's a slightly different question. Well, it is a different question. Suppose you say, well, true is best, or true is better. So let's just set that for now. You might say, well, okay, but then is it better to know the truth, or just happen to have a true belief? And you might think, well, what's the difference? And in our own cases, it's hard to see the difference. Right? So to see this, it's a bit easier to think about someone else. Right? So here's an example. So imagine a person who knows she was adopted. We'll start with her parents telling about this. She's seen plenty of evidence that she's met her birth mother and her birth family, so she knows she was adopted. Now imagine someone else who was not brought up in that way. She was in fact adopted, but it was kept from her. But nevertheless, a fortune teller, just by chance, has told her that she was adopted. Not because the fortune teller knew, just because that seemed like a kind of spooky thing for a fortune teller to say. And this person believes the fortune. The first person I told you about, we might say, well, she knows she was adopted. The second person who went to the fortune teller, she thinks she was adopted, she believes she was, and in fact she's right. That was how I set the story up. This is what her belief is true. It seems like still her position is not as good as the first person. There seems to be something she's lacking. So she's got the true belief, but she's kind of got misconceptions about it, or she doesn't have the right justification for her belief, she hasn't got evidence. So she's got it right, but kind of through luck or through accident. And so we might say, well, is it better to have knowledge to really know and have the evidence justification, or if we think it's better, why is it better? Right, so there's two value questions there. So one is, in effect, a question about the value of truth, and the other one is a question about the value of knowledge, as opposed to sort of mere truth, you might say, or truth that you got by accident, or truth that you got through some kind of misconception. Okay. Now, let me be completely frank. So originally, when I was writing the handout, I had a table here, and the table got mixed up with the boxes and the bullet points, so I got rid of the table. But there's a kind of four-way thing, so I'm now going to make two more distinctions, and it would have been better to have a table had I been more capable with Microsoft Word. So I've been thinking better, is it better to have this or to have that? Right? Is it better to have a true belief rather than false belief? Is it better to have knowledge rather than just a true belief? And you may very well say, well, better in what sense? Things could be better or worse in many different dimensions, many different variations of that. You might think aesthetically better, or spiritually better, or more useful, or there's lots of different ways you might try and evaluate things, including beliefs. But let me just kind of separate two different ways. So one way in which a true belief might be better than a false belief is in some kind of pragmatic sense. It's better for helping us get something else that we care about. So it doesn't have to be sort of money or, consumer goods or whatever, right? It could be that it's better for us as a way of obtaining good interpersonal relationships, or good aesthetic appreciation, or a better spiritual understanding, whatever it is you might care about. Like one way in which a true belief or knowledge might be valuable to you, if it's a way of helping you get something else that you value, whatever that might be. So that's what I call pragmatically better. But pragmatically in this very general sense, just helping you get something else that you care about or whatever. But that might not be the only way in which knowledge or true belief might be valuable. Some people have thought that it's just good in its own right. Right? Even if a true belief or knowledge isn't in any way useful in helping you get more money or have better relationships or to feel more one with yourself or to get a PhD or anything else you might care about. It has an intrinsic value of its own. Okay, so we've sort of got a matrix now of questions. We say, well, is truth better than falsity or better than no belief? Is knowledge better than true belief? And then we've got different senses of better. So unsurprisingly, I can't magically answer all of those questions. Right? But if you're thinking about is knowledge valuable, it's useful to be asking yourself these questions. Like, what do I mean by valuable? Do I mean useful for other things? Do I mean valuable in its own right? Do I mean knowledge or do I mean truth? And if you've got plenty of time, you can be trying to answer all of those questions. But let me just have a little go at saying a few words about them right now. There isn't going to be a general answer about whether true beliefs are useful for helping you get stuff that you want. Right? depends what you want, depends what the true beliefs are, depends on the person, right? So there's quite a lot of psychological evidence that it's actually quite good for you to have a slightly inflated opinion of yourself, right? So it's a way of people achieve more, they can be happier. I mean, on the whole, right? So these are generalizations. In general, it's not terribly good for you to have a very accurate opinion of yourself. Put it that way. On the other hand, having an accurate view about where the local supermarkets are is going to be really important. And, it's not going to be, it's hard to see how a false belief there could be useful to you. But even in the adoption case, you might think, well, different people approach this in different ways. But what people want to know about the circumstances of their birth and so on is different for different people. And people might agonize about these decisions if they've got the opportunity to make contact. So there isn't going to be a general answer here about what's good for you. And so it depends what you care about, depends what else is going on in your life and so on. And indeed, so as I say in my handout, I mean, it's not even what's good for you might be different from what's good for me, but each of us care about conflicting things. Like we care about different people, different projects. You might have trouble balancing out your commitment to your friends and family, to your commitment to your work life. There's lots of different things. So having a true belief or having knowledge may help with some of your projects and not others. So there isn't a sort of general answer. It's also worth saying that sometimes I think maybe we've all felt that, perhaps again mundane in the supermarket, sometimes any belief may be more useful than protection of belief. What do I mean by that? Sometimes when you're looking for where to go, right, trying to find somewhere, or we're in a strange city, you're on holiday, you don't know whether it's this way or that way, sometimes it's better just to choose. Right? If you stand down the street corner all day, you're not going to get to where you want to go. It depends on the circumstance. Sometimes it's better to suspend belief until you're really sure, not to believe one thing or the other. Sometimes it's important just to choose. It's also true that sometimes, there's a question, so philosophers used to say, well, it's always better to have more true beliefs. But of course, one way of getting more true beliefs, or indeed more knowledge, is to go out and count the grains of sand on the beach, or examine them all. There's a kind of trivial sense in which it's easy to get more knowledge, easy to get more truth. But we don't tend to think that all truths are as valuable as others. Right? Some kinds of knowledge you might think have more value than others. And when we start thinking about that way, partly that's the pragmatic way, so it's not going to be much use to you to know exactly how many grains of sand there are on the beach. But not just that, this brings us to the thought that we also often, at least unreflectively, think of knowledge as being something that's valuable in its own right. Right? It's good to know, not just because that will help you get other things you want or care about, but there's something inherently valuable about knowledge. I think it's a mistake to see these things as alternatives that we have to choose between. Right? So sometimes I think when you hear the idea that knowledge is valuable for its own sake, there's a suggestion that therefore we can neglect the pragmatic side of things, or we don't have to go out to the world with our knowledge or do useful things with our knowledge. But that's not what I mean at all. Right? I think one can think that knowledge is intrinsically valuable, not valuable for its own right, whilst also recognising the enormous practical power and usefulness that knowledge can have. But let me just focus now on this possibility that knowledge is valuable for its own sake. How would we establish if you don't think that? Well, if you meet someone who doesn't think that, they say, well, just the only value really there is in knowledge is when it's useful for something else I care about. How can you respond? Well, you can say, well, I feel differently, but it's hard to make a case, it's hard to say more than that, right? And that's a kind of special sort of reason, not just because this is a tricky issue, but also because it's always difficult to argue or to establish or to give evidence that something is valuable for its own sake. Because as soon as we start getting evidence, we're going to be talking about other things. Like if someone doesn't see that human life is valuable, for example, there's not much else you can draw upon to say, well, this is why if someone just doesn't see that. If I start saying, well, it's useful to have more people because it helps the economy or something like that, well, maybe that's true, but I'm not thereby establishing the intrinsic value of human life. So whenever we try and establish the intrinsic value of something, we're very often at a bit of a loss to know what to do, because as soon as we start giving reasons, we seem to be moving our attention away from the intrinsic value of the thing. But one thing to reflect on here is that whether or not we can establish that knowledge is valuable in its own right, it may well be, especially as researchers, right, it may be that having the policy of treating it as valuable is in fact a pragmatically valuable thing. Right? So one, just to make it a little bit more concrete, you might think if right from the beginning of your research, your academic research, or even just your research about what to do when you go on holiday, or meals you might cook, or something like that, start off thinking, well, I only want to know the useful stuff. That's the kind of thing that can kind of get in your way. It can stop you exploring in a creative way. You're constantly reflecting on, well, is this something I really need to know? I mean, perhaps you've had that experience cramming for exams, right? And it's not a pleasant experience. So treating knowledge as something that's just worth having can actually often be the most useful way of getting the useful kind of knowledge. Not always, right? I don't want to overgeneralize, but well, the point I'm trying to make here is that even if we can't really prove, or even if we're not really quite sure whether we want to think that knowledge is something that's kind of special in its own right, still kind of going on as if it is may in fact be a way of achieving many of the other goals. Okay, the final thing I want to say then, in connection with this, which connects with knowledge exchange and impact and so on, is when we think about these value questions, often, philosophers have a bad habit of doing this anyway, which is to kind of think too much about the individual. What we tend to do is, like the example I gave you about the person who knew she was adopted and the person who had just been told by a fortune teller. We think about an individual person and we think about her knowing something, and then we think about, well, is that a good thing? Is it valuable for that person to know that? But knowledge has this kind of really nice feature, right? That you can share it around without losing it. Like, so if I have money and I decide to give some money to everybody in the room, I end up with less than what I started with. Same thing with food or lots of other things. But with knowledge, if we share our knowledge, you don't end up with less of it. And so that's another way of thinking about these value questions, is to think, well, if knowledge does have value, like it has value for me, then the more, if you get to have the knowledge as well, that has value for you as well, without diminishing the value it has for me. So appreciating the intrinsic value of knowledge, that can be what, again, think about this intrinsic thing as a motivation for the pragmatic thing or practical thing. Appreciating the intrinsic value of knowledge can motivate communicating, taking your knowledge out there in the world. I don't want to end up with muttering about the rest. Let me just be a bit clear about what I had in mind there. My point is that, again, I think to stress this thought that we can end up thinking of knowledge as good in its own right, or knowledge for its own sake, as being somehow opposed to the idea of kind of knowledge as kind of being practical use in society and something that we should share with especially if we're funded by the HRC, we're finally share with the taxpayers who are funding that. These things can come together, right? One reason, if we think that knowledge is valuable and important, which I guess many of us do, that in itself can be a motivation for sharing it with others and sharing it with people outside the academy. I think it's really important that many of us are doing useful research, rather than research that is helping it solve societal problems and so on. But that's not the only way in which we can share our knowledge with the wider society. Okay, I think I'm going to stop there, and magically Katie is going to give us questions from around Scotland. I hope the people on the discussion board will chip in. That would be really great to know that you're out there. Thank you.
We're open for discussion. I might take 2 seconds to fiddle with the sound a little bit. But go ahead and ask questions. We also will have questions coming in from the discussion board and also from Twitter. So
Also from Twitter. Oh, okay. Great.
We're tweeting.
I don't have a question while Katie's sorting out the technology. Or just a reaction, that would be fine as well, doesn't it?
Okay. So, questions?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your talk and your series as well. So would epistemological discourse then be sort of like a quality control, or is that too?
Yeah, no, that's a nice way of thinking about it. I think that's well, let me say that's one reason it's important. Yeah. So I think yes, for some of us, we're interested in these epistemological issues for their own sake, but that's not for everybody. But I think the way in which it's important for other researchers who don't take that as their main focus is to think, well, it's useful to keep an eye on what you're doing, your methodologies, why am I using these arguments, why am I using this kind of evidence, is this really going to get me the kind of standard of knowledge that I'm seeking? So a little bit like, the case with the epistemology of medicine, I guess, illustrates that in some ways, right? So those are important issues, like how can we really know whether a certain drug or therapy or intervention is effective? Do we have to have a randomized controlled trial, or can we have knowledge about that? That's really important exactly for quality control, as you were saying, because these trials are big and expensive, and there's always somebody that doesn't get the intervention, and there are kind of tragic stories there as well. But this is one of particular interest. I mean, particularly there are lots of issues there around how seriously we take kind of patients and anecdotal experiences on. Can we take that as part of knowledge of medicine? And I think those are really important practical questions, and they are. I think thinking about that as quality control for medical research is a nice way of thinking about that. And I would hope also in the Arts Humanities as well, so where we're all pursuing our research. We've got our own concerns, but how taking a moment to reflect on what we think we're doing and what standards we're applying, and are we living up to the standards that we want to apply to ourselves? I think it's the question.
Yeah, just for the
Sure.
my. I have a question from our discussion board.
Great.
So here we go. The question is this: where does good faith knowledge fit in the dichotomy between knowledge and belief? For example, if I genuinely believe that I know myself to be adopted or not adopted, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. So in a way, this is why I said, well, let's not think about this in the first person, right? Because it's trickier. Let's think about someone else and think of it. Do we see someone else that I've imagined, and she thinks she's adopted, and so on. But of course, we want to know what to do in our own case. Right? So I find I have these beliefs, and how do I tell which of my beliefs counts as knowledge, right? So I didn't know. I mean, the two things to say, I think. So one is that there's no recipe here, right? Of course, these are things that we agonize over in our own case. What do I really know? How sure am I? If you've ever had to make a kind of big decision about something, of course, there isn't a philosopher can't tell you how to tell in each case what you know and what you don't know. But just to step back from that a little bit, it's also, I think, helpful to think about blame and praise in these cases. So sometimes we see people believing things on grounds that we think are frivolous or unreasonable. We feel, not that there's something ethically wrong necessarily, but we say, well, look, that's unreasonable, it's irrational, there's something problematic about that. Whereas other times, we look at someone else's beliefs and say, well, look, I think she's wrong, but you can see why she thinks that. That's what I would believe in those circumstances, perfectly reasonable. The person hasn't done anything wrong, they're just kind of lucky in some sense. I think that's the way to think about one's own case as well. You can't sort of look outside and do a sort of independent check on which of your beliefs are right or not. But what you can do is to reflect in your own case about, well, I'm believing this in good faith. Is it just faith? What evidence have I got? What reasons can I draw upon? And that's what you can do in your own case. But in a way, that's why it's important, again, to come back to the social character of knowledge, is that we talk to each other, and we compare reasons for things, and we exchange evidence. Often, and I'm sure we've all had this experience, especially in relationships, like you come to a belief and you really feel it strongly, and yet at the same time you don't know whether you're being reasonable or not, and that's when you call your friend. Right? So I think that actually we do what we can from the first person perspective, but often that's why social interaction is important. And not just when you're thinking about your friends, but also in a research context. Right? This is another reason why we exchange our ideas and our research, and we present our work in progress, and we give our work for other people to read. It's exactly that kind of quality control idea again. Is that you can't always tell from the inside of your project whether you're being reasonable or not, and other people can, if they're generous and kind people, can help you out with that.
I have more from the board, but is there a question in the room?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your answer. But here I'd like to ask about epistemology. There are two ontologies. One ontology, okay, or there are more than one ontology. How can epistemology, okay, approach these different ontologies?
Do you have an example in mind, or?
Well, as a researcher, there are two kinds of researchers. Yeah, qualitative and quantitative researcher. The qualitative usually wants to or intends to understand more than to explain the ontology, and he has more than one real knowledge. Okay, and he's among all of these should observate, right? Whereas the objective, the quantitative, just is outside. Okay, so here we have two kinds of researchers, two kinds of approaches of researching. So my question about epistemology as an umbrella, okay, how can epistemology approaches these two approaches?
Yeah. Okay. So for the case I might didn't pick that up, the question was really, well, the number of issues, but one issue I took from that was the question about, when we have different methodologies for studying the same kind of stuff, how to reconcile or how to think about that. But also that some research approaches or some research methods involve us in thinking of kind of ontology in a sort of multiple way and recognizing there are multiple realities without having to sort of choose between them. But perhaps in anthropology, that some of these issues might resonate. What shall I say? I mean, maybe this brings us to the difference between epistemology and epistemology of, right? So all those things that I listed there, sort of epistemology of the Large Hadron Collider, or epistemology of the posit, or epistemology of technology, and so on. There are going to be quite different things to say in those different cases. Right? So depending on what our domain is, what our subject matter is, there are going to be interestingly subtle and different things to say about how to study it. Right? We can say some very general things about how to gain knowledge, but they're not going to be specific enough to help us in these particular cases, I don't think. But I think there are, to some extent, there's again to come back to the medical case with the RCTs and the patient testimonies and so on. But I think there are disciplines, as you said, the kind of qualitative, quantitative contrast, where there really are disputes about what's the best way of finding knowledge about this particular domain. And I think one thing the epistemologist can do there is not just give us the right answer, but it can help us separate out confused questions, or to say, what do you mean this, what do you mean that? Let's try and break it down a little bit. And also to think about whether we really have to choose. I mean, my view often in research is that, having a multitude of researchers with a multitude of methods can be a good thing. Like we find out different things through different methods. I mean, that's tricky when it comes to something like medicine and drug licensing. We have to either license the drug or not. We can't just say, well, let 1,000 flowers bloom. But in other contexts, when there isn't such a sort of hard and fast decision to make, that might be the right approach.
Would it be correct use of the terminology, say, quantitative and qualitative approach are different technologies?
Yes, the question was whether we might then say that the quantitative and qualitative approaches were different epistemologies. yeah, I feel like I'm a little bit out of my comfort zone here because I don't want to be pronouncing about other people's disciplines. But we might say that at least that they embody different epistemological attitudes or approaches. I mean, it depends, right? So there are some people who think of themselves as qualitative or quantitative who are very dismissive of the other, but there are also people who work in one way or another who are very welcoming of the other approach and more pluralistic. So that's partly be a question of whether you thought that there were different ways of getting knowledge or that your way was the one true way. But when we're discussing these things, certainly what we're discussing, I think, is epistemology. What's the best way of finding knowledge about whatever it is we're interested in?
This is a very interesting question in certain digital humanities fields
Right.
where my background is in literary studies and where you might be gathering masses of quantitative data and your colleagues in literature say, that's not what we do, you've been counting grains of sand. So it actually is a really live question.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose for me, I mean, again, speaking from outside that area, I mean, I guess one question I have then is whether you're using different methods to try and answer the same question, or whether really you're saying, well, look, here are these other questions that are also interesting, and maybe this isn't a method for answering the traditional questions in literary theory, but it's a way of answering some other also interesting questions.
This speaks to some questions that are coming through on the board, and there are actually quite a few of them. So I know there's more. I'm going to try to kind of bring some together because they're actually speaking to similar issues that kind of follow on from what we're discussing. And the question that starts this chain is the question: doesn't all knowledge have impact, almost by definition? Is it the problem only where policy wants to direct toward faster and more economically focused impact, which is related to the question of kind of medical research, right, which is very impactful, but it's probably not the kind of work that we're doing in the arts and humanities for the most part. So then we need to justify the value of our knowledge in relation to something like a drug patent, which is problematic in some ways. And the kind of follow-on here, but there are several, so I'm going to pause.
Okay, right. So, I mean, what I was gesturing at right at the end there, when I sort of tailed off with muscle on the handout, was a sort of frustration, not with impact in the wider sense, but in sort of certain definitions of impact that we're required to pursue. And in particular, I think there's some people have been concerned around the REST, the Research Excellence Framework, which assesses research policy in UK universities, with the emphasis on showing that something. The worry was that impact, it wasn't enough of impact to show that a lot of people now knew more about David Hume, for example, or a lot of more people had now heard about Toni Morrison. You had to show that had then they'd gone and had done something different in their lives as a result of that. Which of course, one's life is changed by reading Toni Morrison or David Hume, but not in a way that one can necessarily quantify. So I suppose what I was trying to do, and perhaps is agreeing with the questioner there, which is to say, well, look, by sharing our knowledge, that is impactful, even if that enriches people's lives without us being able to say that they had a better drug as a result of that.
And several people have suggested that one way that's useful for them to think about knowledge is to think about the process of producing knowledge as itself the thing that is to be valued.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's really interesting. Okay, so on here. So the question was whether the process of producing knowledge was itself valuable. I guess either as well as, or perhaps even instead of the end product being valuable. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question. Right? So I'm just thinking on my feet here. I guess some of these distinctions again, I would want to say, well, okay, what do we mean? Is it valuable for its own sake? Is it valuable because it's useful for other things? I mean, what I'm tempted to say is, what makes it valuable is you get some knowledge at the end of it rather than the but I think that's probably a bit too simplistic. I mean, one thing that's interesting about research, right, is often we do it, especially if you do archival research or other certain kinds of research, you don't know what's going to be a dead end and what isn't, right? You do the stuff, and some of it works out and some of it doesn't. And there's two ways of thinking about that. In retrospect, we might say, well, looking back, that whole month of March was a waste of time because it led to nothing, whereas the research I did in April was really valuable because it produced knowledge. Or we might want to look back and say, well, that was all valuable. That was all part of the process of producing knowledge. And so even the stuff that was in some sense a dead end or a mistake had some value in its own right. So I think that's, if I was going to be thinking about this further, that's the question I'd be thinking about. I'd be saying, well, is the process valuable only when, in fact, it does produce knowledge, or does it also sometimes have value for its own sake? I mean, I'd like to say, one answer that philosophers have given to why knowledge is valuable, it actually turns that on its head and says, well, knowledge is valuable because it's the result of a valuable process. So it's the process of acquiring it that has value. An idea that goes back to Aristotle in some ways. It's an exercise of one's own skill and competence. It's an achievement in the world. That's part of the good life, part of a flourishing life, is to sort of exercise your skills in the world in that way. And that's why knowledge is a good thing. One of the things you get when you do that kind of human flourishing activity that we call acquiring knowledge. So yeah, we can either think of the process or the product as what's primarily valuable, or indeed both of them.
One of the ways you mentioned here that knowledge acquired just what I believe, okay, that there are a lot of things in our life, okay, from very small insects to dinosaurs, that they were indeed a long time ago, that these are knowledge. Okay, but sometimes we cannot justify their existence. For example, I'm Muslim. Okay, I believe in God as a Christian, but we cannot justify the existence just because we are here. So here, my question is: a knowledge could a knowledge be a belief? And if you say yes or not, so what's the difference between these two knowledge?
Yeah, okay, that's great. So the question there was about the difference between knowledge and belief, and also pointing out that there are certain things that so one example was belief in God, that it can be something that's really central to people's lives, and yet it's not the kind of thing, well, for many people they don't feel it's the kind of thing that they need to justify. It's part of how they see the world. Or it would be a kind of mistake to think of this as something needing justification. Let me speak about that, then I'll pick on the other things you said. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure in the Islamic tradition as well, but I'm more familiar with the Christian tradition, there's a lot of discussion exactly this, right? So do we have knowledge of God? Is faith a form of knowledge, or is it something that we have instead of knowledge, something that's better than knowledge? In connection with my own research, people talk about trust and knowledge in the same way. I mean, of course, there have been people who try to give arguments and evidence for God, but that's not the only way. I think some people think that they do have evidence for God's existence, and that is justified. So, yeah, I don't have a view myself there, but that's really a central question for philosophical thinking about religion. But the other cases you gave, in a way, were more mundane. You said, well, I know about the dinosaurs, or I know about insects, all sorts of things I know. If you ask me what my evidence is, I couldn't tell you now. So the question there was, I suppose, challenging the difference between the connection between knowledge and justification. I think that's right, especially when a very large part of what we know because other people have told us. We don't check, typically, right? And probably now we don't even remember who it was that told, what book it was. Again, this is a familiar experience of research, right? If you don't organise your notes, you know you read it somewhere, but where did you read it? I think that's right. So there's a question there. So one, a sort of strict response would be to say, well, then you don't really know it, okay, because you didn't keep track of your evidence. But that's such an extreme response, right? That would mean that we hardly know anything. So instead, my view would be that we need to come up with an understanding of justification, which says, well, you are justified in believing in dinosaurs, right? You didn't just invent that, right? Although you perhaps don't have first-hand evidence at your fingertips, that's something you've seen TV documentaries or whatever. That's enough. Like, justification doesn't have to be overwhelming evidence. It can be at least some reason to think it. You have more reason to believe in dinosaurs, let's say, than we do to believe in space aliens or leprechauns or something. And we have to be able to kind of more modest about what justification requires, I think.
people generally speaking about people, they treat as if opinions, ideas, their claims as if they are facts and knowledge. Even though researcher, he sometimes claims this is from the start, and then when he just did the idea, he is supporting, without any real evidence that this is knowledge and this.
Mm-hmm.
So here, I think people, for example, I give you an example. Argument that linguists, for example, look at language differently. We think that French is the language of law, and German is the language of efficiency, right? Mm-hmm. But these people try to say these languages are different. Languages more beautiful than the others, but in fact, languages that have the same. All of them, they've got these three components: grammar, pronunciation.
Yes, I think so. What the question is drawing attention to, that I think is right, which is that there are many things, I guess, which are considered kind of common knowledge, or many people believe them, or we think these are things we know. And in fact, it's one role for science and for research more generally is sometimes to undermine what's thought to be common knowledge. I think that's right. So this is what we always, there's a balancing act here, right? Because we don't want to set the standards for knowledge so high that it becomes almost impossible to know anything, right? But at the same time, particularly in the context of our research, we want standards fairly high, right? We want to be rigorous and we want to be reflecting on our methods and our evidence and so on. And perhaps, something I didn't get to today, but perhaps, interesting to think about particular responsibilities that we have as academic researchers in establishing knowledge claims might be, in some sense, the kind of evidence level required there might be higher than what we need in our everyday lives.
This speaks directly to a response that I have on the board, which is reply to dinosaurs. Yes, we can be modest about justification, provided that the researchers promulgating the idea provide a chain of accountability through citations, etc., which others can, should they wish, verify. But this is interesting. We were talking earlier about paralysis and the kind of, endless turtle pile of lies that small children bring us, for example. But this gets to be a problem with justification, too, because you can generalize, it seems to me, by chasing down everyone else's justification. And there's a point at which you kind of have to. So what's that point?
Yeah, right. So
where you kind of throw up your hands and say.
I think we can't. As individuals, so sometimes philosophers talk about epistemic autonomy, but there are really limits how autonomous we can be. Like we can't. We can't run around checking all the methods. Even this is one reason why when there are cases like they're explored in the journals and so on, it's so devastating. It's because there's an enormous amount of trust in the system that it just would not be feasible for us to be checking it. And even within the same research group, there's trust and so on. So when there are these cases of, often you hear more often about it in the sciences, but it can be kind of fake data and so on, it has huge ramifications. Because once you start worrying about it, you don't know when to stop worrying. But this is why we have, this is why within the academic sphere anyway, we have these standards of citation and peer review, and it's supposed to keep some kind of control on that and provide motivations for people to be honest and to keep track of their sources and so on. But it is true that nothing's 100% because it's like with any kind of risk, like often the more you try and eliminate risk in some activity, the harder it becomes to preserve why you wanted to do the activity or the value of the activity in the first place. So we're thinking about flying internationally or crossing the road, right? We have to accept a certain amount of risk, and this is the kind of epistemic risk as well.
So this is speaking to, I'll take one more from the board and then open it back to you in the room, but this is speaking to a question that's come up several times in different forms on the discussion forum, and it's the question of the social aspect of knowledge. This has come up in a variety of guises. So the question about situated knowledge, right? to what extent do we need to, and I'm scrolling down here to find the articulation, which was better than what I would come up with on my own. Aren't these different epistemologies what Donna Haraway is describing when she talks about situated knowledges? The issue seems to be how we recognize or value these partial perspectives and facilitate dialogue between them. This carries on. I'm thinking about who or what is seen to be involved in producing knowledge from another participant. From an ecological perspective, environments and non-humans can be understood to be participants in producing knowledge rather than knowledge being a purely human-made thing. And there are more questions along these lines. Read one more of them. Can you say something more about whose knowledge? I'm thinking about a female patient's knowledge of poverty, bodily, somatically, physically, and the male politician's knowledge. What does this say about how knowledge is gained and what is valued?
Well, these are all really great questions. And luckily, the next 9 lecturers, I hope.
A little stash.
Yeah.
Questions about
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I think that's exactly right to bring those questions up, and depending on the kind of research you're doing, that can be the kind of knowledge that you're trying to produce. And I'm serious when I mean that. I think that future weeks that we'll be coming back to many of these issues, and I don't know whether Haraway will feature again, but there's certainly these ideas about kind of situated knowledge and so on. What can I say in just a minute here?
Sorry.
No, it's great. It's great to hear that people think about it. Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I'm trying to think something sort of impossible to say here, but except to say yes, absolutely, context and environment and who one is, and so when right at the beginning I talked about epistemology of ignorance, Charles Mills. There's that's one important example of some of these ideas, where that what you can know and what seems obvious to you and what seems like good evidence can very much depend on your place in society, whether that's your racial identity or gender identity or just the amount of political power you have, as some of your questioners are bringing out. I mean, there are different sorts of responses. There's different ways of kind of theorizing those phenomena, which I think are undeniable. The one is to say there's a kind of body of there's a body of facts that we're all trying to find out about, a single body of facts, and depending on where you are, you have different perspectives on them, different access to them, and that it's important to recognise that in the feminist tradition, often people think about standpoint epistemologies. There's from different perspectives one can see different parts of the elephant, as it were. But a more radical view here would be to say, well, no, there isn't a single elephant that we're all looking at, right? From different perspectives, there are different things to know, and there is no way of unifying these things together. I'm more inclined towards the single elephant point of view, but I know there are very good reasons also to take the other points of view. I think, I mean, practical question there is to think about, well, how do we, to me it's not enough to say, well, the politician has his point of view and the female patient has her point of view. We want to try and do something to get the male politician to appreciate something of the female patient's point of view, even if it's not possible to appreciate the whole picture from her perspective. So I think it's important to recognise the situationness of knowledge, but not to let that be a reason to just say, okay, that's how it is. We don't need to try and bring people together more.
Well, this comes back to the thing you mentioned earlier about relativism. That what it seems like we need is a difference between different elephants and all the different elephants you could possibly want, including Holocaust denial.
Right.
So the question is, can we distinguish between situated knowledges and all-out, full-blown relativism in this sense?
Well, this is, if I knew the answer to all these questions, my career would be, I'd be getting on the world. No, seriously, I mean, these are really important issues, but I think you can see, once you start thinking in epistemological terms, you see, for example, a lot of these, a lot of stuff that's been in the media the last few years about victims of sexual abuse and reporting historic abuse and how to what to make of victim testimony there, and how to think about standards of evidence and how to treat people and how to believe people and make people feel encouraged, and yet also have a fair trial and so on. Those are quite concrete examples of some of the concerns we're talking about in more abstract ways here. And in a way, just as with we said, well, in some of the medical cases, in the end, either you license the drug or you don't. In these sorts of cases, when you have a legal context, in the end, either you bring someone to trial or you don't, and either someone's convicted or they're not. So that's why, although there are no easy answers here, this is partly why I feel, well, this is, can't give up on trying to sort of give some way of at least connecting these different knowledges and different standpoints, which is not to identify them and say it's just one nice big happy family, but also we have to find some way of bringing them together and comparing them, or at least weighing them against each other, because sometimes we have practical decisions like that to make, which are kind of heartbreaking situations. Yeah. Bring it down into the
So, what I think personally, that there's nothing. Is the ability to get evidence for others. There are talking about something which is relative. I can't really say that feels good. Okay. But because she's beautiful, because she convinces me, and she doesn't convince the other. And I can give a lot of examples of all of these things. Okay? For example, prophets convince some people of the knowledge of the existence of God, and he couldn't, persuades or convinces the other. So whether what he's talking about is real or not real, okay, is it knowledge or not knowledge? Okay, whether it's true or not true, so it depends on the ability, okay, to say that it's knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I want to steer away from the lovely ladies examples. But you're right. It's an important issue here about who gets to. There's in effect a kind of a sociological question here about who gets to call themselves a knower, who persuades other people that they know, who has the best rhetoric, who can bring people around to their point of view. And this is in the scientific context, the sociologists of science study this, and this historians study, and so on, of course. I think that's the response you're pointing to there, to that kind of seeing that some people have a louder voice than others, and some people are more persuasive than others, some people have more power in the media than others. One response there is to say, well, so it's just all who shout loudest, right? But I think it's important to resist that. Right? I say, well, that yes, people do. Some people have more persuasive power than others, but that's something we should struggle against sometimes, right? So, and why should we struggle against? It's not just because it's nice for everyone to shout loudly. It's because collectively we're trying to get at the truth as far as we can, right? Without thinking that we can always find out the exact truth. But nevertheless, one reason we think it's problematic that there are unequal access to persuasive mechanisms is that we think that's bad for us as a whole. That's going to make it less likely that as a society we come to get the knowledge that we need. And political philosophers talk, or not just political philosophers, political scientists talk about this in terms of epistemic democracy as well. I'm thinking about issues there about how do we have an informed debate in society about the right way forward with politics. And I think we shouldn't just fall back and say, well, it's just all a matter of opinion. I think that's too easy, and I think that's problematic, more problematic for underprivileged people, in fact, than it is for the people who have the power.
I make a problem, but what I'm thinking about is that that's the knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it tastes good, coffee or not, doesn't depend on the coffee itself. It depends on the person.
Yeah. So what the question is saying is that, well, there are some things where judgment seems to be, in some sense, a matter of taste, right? And that has to be right. So, so when you think about wine or coffee or anything, the connoisseurs, there are some people who are going to say, well, there's just an objective fact about which is the best coffee, which is the best wine, and other people can say this is just rubbish nonsense. And I think in each case, well, humour is the same, right? It's like I said, well, this joke really is funny, even though you don't realise how funny it is. In each case, we can say, well, is that the right way to think about wine, or about humour, or about coffee, or about aesthetic value? And we can debate those in each case. But I think we shouldn't mistake that for the whole of knowledge, right? That doesn't mean that we should say the same thing about scientific knowledge or about knowledge in general in the arts and humanities.
So speaking to the issue of situated knowledge that came up, I was also wondering a bit about, I guess, changing temporal nature of epistemology. What was right? What was, proper quality control at one time? Then suddenly, you know what I mean?
Yeah, great. So the question was about how, the talk I gave was very kind of atemporal, sort of outside of time, and the question is rightly pointing out that our ideas about what the right standards are for knowledge have changed over time. Again, I'm going to partly put this forward to the other 9 lectures, some of which will be talking about different ideas from different periods of history. But, you're dead right to note that, this is one, in the case I'm most familiar with, when thinking about the history of science, so this is exactly something that's evolved over time. Like, so what's the relative authority of texts from texts in the ancient world that have preserved in the Islamic world and came through back to Europe, as opposed to what you see with your own senses? How should one do an experiment? What's a good experiment? How do we weigh experiments against authority? Who is, I'm going to recommend Stephen Shaken's book about the social history of truth. Let me recommend that to everybody. It's a wonderful book about how issues about honour and gentlemanliness and scientific knowledge all got kind of wrapped up together. So whose word can we take? Whose word can be trusted and so on. Yeah, for sure these ideas change. I think they are. Katie mentioned the digital humanities. Right now with big data, things are changing extremely quickly. Like, how do we? And perhaps some of you may have seen some of this discussion of the replicability crisis in psychology, or kind of issues about the kind of how do we, when we have this huge amount of data. So I'm muddling both the issues here together, but I think as technology changes in particular, but also as culture changes, we have different possibilities for finding knowledge, and that forces us to rethink, well, what's going to count as knowledge here? If you've got this enormous amount of data and you just go in and you pick out the stuff that suits you, how's that similar or different from doing it and kind of more controlled experiments and so on? And these are really live issues. So I'm no expert on how these ideas in fact have changed over time, but for sure they have. And so it's important to remember that the period we're in is just another period, right? There's a kind of cultural contingency to how we think about these issues at the moment that is going to seem very different in years to come.
I think we're about out of time, actually. And our live stream is going to automatically, mysteriously, and without my control, going to shut down. So we actually need to end on time. So I want to thank you so much for a really, really engaging lecture, and there's more waiting here to be addressed. I want to encourage all of you, first of all, thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for taking part in the course. We're really excited about it. I want to encourage you to keep the conversation going on the discussion forum. That will not close or shut down because of mysterious, the ontology of the internet or whatever is causing that. Anyway, I want to thank you for coming. Dr. Hawley, thank you so much for your lecture.
Well, thank you, Katie, for organising absolutely everything. And goodbye. Thank you.